this great inheritance and of the duties and heavy responsibilities of sovereignty, which have now passed to my beloved daughter.
The words did not sound like routine palace business. They sounded like a verdict. When King Charles stood before the gathered household and declared, "She will lead now," the room changed forever. Catherine stood frozen. Camilla's face tightened, and William looked as if he had just watched history turn in front of him. In one sentence, power shifted, loyalty was tested, and the monarchy entered a new chapter. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Charles knew every person in that room understood the weight of what was coming. Buckingham Palace had hosted difficult announcements before, but this was different because it was not about a tour, a ceremony, or a public schedule. It was about who would carry influence inside the family itself. The household role he named meant a trusted position guiding private royal coordination, family appearances, and ceremonial decisions before they reached the public eye. That made the words dangerous. That made them final. Catherine did not step forward at first. She stayed still, as if the duty had landed on her shoulders before she had agreed to lift it. Charles looked at her again, not with softness, but with the hard calm of a monarch who had already crossed the line in his own heart. The king told the room that she would now take precedence in internal ceremonial influence and family coordination, placing her judgment ahead of Camilla's where the future image of the monarchy was concerned. Catherine heard the power in it. She also heard the cost. Camilla did not break. She would never give the room that satisfaction. Yet her hand tightened around the chair beside her, and the silence around the queen consort became sharper than any protest. She understood what others were only beginning to understand. This was not a warning. It was not a temporary correction. It was a removal from the quiet center she had fought so long to occupy. Charles had not taken her crown, but he had taken the invisible power that made the crown feel secure. William watched Catherine before he watched anyone else. The prince did not interrupt, did not challenge, did not rescue the room from its own shock. His silence carried its own confession. When Charles said the decision had been prepared for longer than anyone there understood, William's face barely changed, and that stillness told the household everything. Private conversations had happened. Hidden planning had moved behind closed doors. The future king had known something was coming. Camilla rose before the room had fully breathed again. She did not congratulate Catherine. She did not look back at Charles. The queen consort walked out with dignity, but dignity could not hide the wound. One aide saw the king remain exactly where he stood, making no move to follow her. That choice struck harder than the speech itself, because it revealed the rupture beneath the royal calm. And before the palace could understand what Charles had just done, everyone inside that room had to face a harder question. Why Catherine? And why now? Catherine had spent years learning how to survive inside the monarchy without appearing hungry for power. Camilla had spent years proving she could hold her place after decades of public judgment. And Charles, caught between loyalty and legacy, had finally chosen one woman to steady the future and another to step back from it. This was not just a palace decision. It was personal, painful, and impossible to undo. Catherine felt the room closing around her after the speech ended. She understood what royal household authority meant now, because the household was the private working structure around the family, where schedules, ceremonies, appearances, and quiet influence were shaped before the world saw anything. Charles had placed her at the heart of that structure, before people who knew how much power lived in those hidden channels. A monarchy does not survive on crowns alone. It survives on trust, rhythm, and the face the public believes in when everything else feels uncertain. Camilla carried herself with control, but humiliation moved beneath it like fire under stone. The queen consort still had her title, the role of the king's wife beside him. Yet the speech had taken something quieter and sharper. It had taken the room before she entered it. It had taken the private access that made every aide listen differently. She had not lost her place at Charles's side, but she had lost the power to decide how others stood around him. William waited until the corridor emptied before he spoke to Catherine. The prince kept his voice low, as if one wrong word might make the burden heavier. He told her Charles had been watching, who steadied the family when pressure came, who calmed storms without demanding credit, and who carried pain without turning it into punishment. Catherine did not smile. She looked down, absorbing the truth that her quiet discipline had become evidence. and evidence had become power. A senior courtier later described the months before the speech, in a private documented account prepared for the king's office. The courtier admitted Camilla had resisted Catherine's growing influence whenever public sympathy leaned toward the princess, and that resistance had changed the air inside the palace. Charles had seen it. William had sensed it. Catherine had felt it long before anyone dared to name it. Then Charles asked Catherine to remain after everyone else left. Camilla paused beyond the door, hearing the request and understanding the insult inside the silence. She had been close enough to power to recognize exclusion instantly. And behind that closed door lay the hidden history of a palace rivalry that had been building long before Charles ever spoke those explosive words. Every palace storm has a moment people later remember differently. Some call it a misunderstanding. Others call it the moment the mask slipped. For Charles, the trigger was not a rumor or a newspaper headline. It was one royal banquet, one seating change, one cold exchange near the king's table, and Catherine's quiet refusal to be humiliated in front of the household. Catherine arrived that night believing the evening would be controlled and polished. The Windsor household banquet mattered because it was a private ceremonial dinner, meaning a royal meal where senior family members and palace staff gathered to mark unity behind closed doors. At such gatherings, placement was not casual. A seat near Charles signaled trust. A seat away from him signaled distance. That was why the card in Catherine's hand became more than paper. It became a message. William saw the change before anyone spoke. He watched Catherine read her name, then looked toward the king's table, where her place had been moved back while Camilla's preferred guests sat closer to Charles. Catherine did not argue. She did not ask a staff member to explain. She held the seating card with both hands, and her face moved from confusion into something colder, wounded but controlled. William understood that look. He had seen it before when she chose dignity over damage. Camilla stepped near Catherine with a calm that made the moment sharper. The queen consort did not raise her voice. She did not need to. She told Catherine, "Some positions must be earned twice," and the remark cut through the room with quiet cruelty. Catherine looked at Camilla, then looked away, refusing to give the line the reaction it demanded. Nearby staff went silent, and silence in a palace is never empty. Charles noticed everything. The king watched Catherine stand alone with the card, watched William's jaw tighten, and watched Camilla return to her place as if nothing had happened. Later, through a documented account prepared by the duty equerry, a palace officer assigned to assist senior royals, Charles learned who approved the seating change. That account gave the monarch what emotion alone could not give him. It gave him names, timing, and proof. Charles did not confront Camilla that night. He waited, and that restraint made the coming decision dangerous. The banquet convinced him that private customs were being used to weaken Catherine's standing, not by accident, but by design. The room had smiled, the dinner had continued, but beneath every polished word, the future had shifted. By the time Charles called Camilla into a private room, the decision had already been made. What remained was the pain of saying it aloud. There were no aides in the room when Charles faced Camilla. No secretaries. No protective language. No palace machinery to soften the blow. Just a king, a queen, and the truth neither could avoid. Camilla wanted an explanation. Charles gave her a reckoning. And when Catherine's name entered the conversation, the private wound became a royal earthquake. Charles closed the door himself, and that single act told Camilla this would not be softened by staff. The sitting room had become a chamber of consequence, because no one outside could interrupt, rescue, or reshape what came next. The crown, meaning the monarchy as both a family and a public institution, was no longer just watching this conflict. It was being forced to survive it. The king understood why the moment mattered. Private resentment, if allowed to guide public duty, could turn family tension into national weakness. Camilla demanded the truth without lowering her voice. She asked whether Catherine's new role was ceremonial theater or real power, whether the speech had been crafted to flatter the public or to reduce the queen consort inside her own marriage. Charles removed his glasses and set them on the table with painful care. Then he told her the words she had not expected. This was not performance. This was transfer. This was trust being moved because trust had been damaged. Camilla's control cracked. She accused Charles of rewarding Catherine because the princess already had the public's heart, because sympathy followed her, because every quiet act of strength became another reason for the household to look past the queen consort. The king did not interrupt. He let the anger spend itself, then answered with a colder truth. Catherine had not asked to be favored. She had simply stood steady when others turned pressure into possession. Charles revealed the deeper record through a private documented account gathered by his senior secretary, a trusted palace official responsible for keeping sensitive internal notes. The king said the Windsor household banquet was not the beginning. It was the final confirmation. There had been seating choices, briefing delays, careful exclusions, and small humiliations that looked harmless alone, but formed a pattern together. Camilla stared at him then, because she understood the danger. He had not reacted in anger. He had investigated in silence. The queen consort realized the decision had been forming for weeks. Charles had studied faces, timing, conduct, and consequence. He had watched William protect Catherine without theatrics, and he had watched the princess absorb pain without poisoning the family around her. That was why the speech had sounded so final. It was not a threat, it was a sentence already written. Charles opened the door at last, and William stood outside. The prince did not speak, yet his presence said enough. Camilla saw it instantly. The next generation was no longer standing behind her. But the true force behind the decision was not anger alone. It was the cold calculation of survival. And Charles knew survival now had Catherine's name on it. Power inside a palace rarely moves with noise. It moves through access, precedence, signatures, invitations, and the quiet order in which doors open. Charles understood that better than anyone. His speech was emotional, but the machinery behind it was precise. Catherine had not merely been praised, she had been positioned. Camilla had not merely been embarrassed, she had been overtaken. Charles sat alone after the confrontation, and the silence around him felt heavier than the words he had just spoken. The final household instruction waited on his desk, and he read it twice before touching the pen. A household instruction meant an internal written order telling palace offices how duties, access, and decision-making should now work. This mattered because spoken power could be denied later, but written power changed routines. It changed who received the first call. It changed who entered the room before a decision was made. Catherine's new authority reached into the places the public never saw. She would guide key family ceremonial planning, shape household presentation, and be consulted before major appearances tied to the monarchy's future. That role mattered because the crown did not only depend on grand events, it depended on tone, unity, timing, and emotional trust. Charles knew Catherine carried those things without making them look like ambition, and that was exactly why the decision frightened those who had survived by controlling access. William entered before the ink had fully dried. The prince did not smile. He did not offer congratulations, because he understood too clearly that this was not a prize. He looked at Charles and asked whether Catherine had been told the full cost of what she was inheriting. The king looked down at the signed page, and for one moment, the monarch seemed less like a ruler and more like a father admitting that duty could wound the people it raised. Charles admitted the truth in a recorded private conversation preserved for the senior household file. The decision was not only about Camilla's behavior, it was about preparing the monarchy for a future where calm authority mattered more than hierarchy, and where Catherine's steadiness could protect what rank alone could not. William heard the meaning beneath the words. His wife was not being lifted above conflict. She was being placed directly inside it. A palace advisor then gave the warning no one wanted to hear. Moving Catherine forward could divide older loyalists, especially those who still saw Camilla as Charles's rightful center of influence. The advisor explained that loyalists meant long-serving supporters inside the royal circle who followed tradition, memory, and personal allegiance more than public feeling. Charles listened, but he did not step back. He knew survival sometimes required choosing the person who could carry tomorrow, not the person who had endured yesterday. The signed instruction left the king's desk. Another copy moved toward Catherine, and before she even read the words that would change her place in the palace, the first consequences had already begun. The palace had a new center of gravity now, and the first person forced to feel that shift was the woman who had just lost it. The cruelest losses are not always announced with ceremony. Sometimes they arrive in small details. A meeting begins without you. A chair is moved. A briefing folder goes to someone else first. For Camilla, the dethroning did not become real during Charles's speech. It became real the next morning, when the palace routine continued. But her place inside it had quietly changed. Camilla sat alone at breakfast, staring at the revised page as her tea cooled. The schedule listed Catherine before her on internal family coordination briefings. And that order mattered, because palace schedules were never just lists. An internal family coordination briefing meant a private meeting where aides arranged duties and family movements before the public heard anything. Whoever appeared first was trusted first. Catherine received her own briefing with visible unease. She read the instruction once, then looked at William as if the paper had burned her hands. The prince understood the fear behind her silence, because this was success wrapped in suffering. Catherine told him she had never wanted victory if it meant another woman's humiliation. Kindness could not erase what power had done. Camilla turned the page and found the second wound. Palace staff had been instructed to route ceremonial family decisions through Catherine's team before they reached the queen consort's office. Ceremonial decisions meant choices about royal appearances, family order, public tone, and signals showing who stood closest to the future. Influence often lived in the first draft and the first approval. A courtier noticed the change before noon. Several aides who once waited outside Camilla's door now moved toward Catherine's office without being told, carrying folders with careful faces. The courtier later described the moment in a private household note, recording how the corridor seemed to choose a new direction. Camilla saw it too. She did not ask anyone to stop, she only watched, and the watching hurt. Camilla asked for a private audience with Charles before the afternoon ended. The request should have moved instantly, because the queen consort had always lived near the king's ear. Instead, the reply came late, polite and cold, saying the monarch would respond when his schedule allowed. That delay said what no one dared say aloud. Even her access to Charles had changed. Catherine made her decision by evening. She asked to see Camilla alone, away from aides, away from William, away from the machinery that had wounded them both. The palace felt the danger, because no protocol could control two women facing the same crown from opposite sides. When Catherine stepped into that private room, she was not entering as a rival, but Camilla did not know whether to believe that. The most powerful moment of the entire crisis did not happen in front of courtiers. It happened behind a closed door, with no witness to manage the story and no official statement to polish the truth. Catherine and Camilla faced each other not as symbols, not as rivals, but as two women trapped inside a monarchy that had rewarded endurance and punished vulnerability in equal measure. Catherine entered first, and she carried no triumph with her. The room had been chosen carefully because it sat away from aides, advisors, and family pressure, far from the voices that turned pain into strategy. A courtier meant a palace official who served near senior royals, often close enough to see private tension before the public ever heard a word. That absence mattered. No courtier stood there now. No one could turn this meeting into a managed report. The princess had asked for honesty, and honesty had finally cornered them both. Camilla expected defense. She expected Catherine to explain the new authority, protect it, maybe even remind her that Charles had spoken, and the palace had obeyed. Instead, the princess began with the one thing the queen consort had not prepared for. She acknowledged the pain of being publicly displaced. She said she knew what it meant for a woman to stand in a room while others decided where her value began and ended. Camilla looked away, because sympathy from Catherine felt harder to bear than victory would have been. Catherine told her she would accept the duty, but she would not use it to erase anyone. The crown had already damaged too many women by turning survival into competition, and she would not become another blade in that same old pattern. Camilla heard the word crown and understood its full weight now. Not just jewels or ceremony, but the living burden of a family watched by millions. Catherine was not rejecting power. She was refusing cruelty. Camilla's anger softened into something sadder. In a recorded private conversation, later summarized for Charles by a trusted household secretary, she admitted that watching Catherine rise felt like watching public forgiveness pass her by. The queen consort had spent years trying to be accepted, and now the princess seemed to receive trust without demanding it. That was the wound beneath the pride. Catherine had not stolen the room. The room had moved toward her. Catherine then revealed what Charles had told her privately. He had asked her to lead because he believed she could protect the monarchy without turning family into a battlefield. Camilla understood then that revenge was not sitting across from her. That made the loss sharper, because there was no villainy to fight against, no arrogance to expose, no cruelty to answer. Catherine left quietly, and Camilla remained seated. For the first time, she did not call for Charles. She let the silence answer for him. Inside the palace, the emotional storm had softened, but outside its gates, The world was just beginning to understand what had happened. By morning, the palace could no longer contain the shock. What had begun behind closed doors became a national spectacle, printed in ink, shouted across broadcasts, and whispered by crowds outside royal gates. Catherine's rise was no longer a private family correction. Camilla's fall was no longer a palace secret. The monarchy had moved, and the world had seen where it landed. Catherine saw the first headline before she heard the first broadcast. The London Herald carried the words in heavy print. Catherine steps forward. King reshapes palace power. The headline mattered because a front page did more than report a story. It gave the public a simple frame, a single emotional meaning to carry through the day. This was no longer about private schedules or palace order. It had become a national judgment on who looked like the future. William stood beside Catherine as the morning coverage spread. The prince lowered the volume when he saw her eyes fill, because she did not look proud. She looked cornered by the very trust people were celebrating. Broadcasters called Charles's speech the strongest internal royal shift of his reign, meaning the most forceful change inside the family's working power since he became king. They spoke of Catherine's new leadership. They spoke of Camilla's reduced influence. They spoke as if a door had closed and another had opened in public. Camilla read the papers alone and found the phrase that cut deepest. One column called her the Queen left behind, and she folded the page slowly, refusing to let a staff member take it from her. The Queen consort understood why the phrase mattered. It did not attack her title. It attacked her place in the story. For years, she had fought to be seen as permanent. Now the papers were treating her as the past, while Catherine was being named as the future. Crowds gathered outside Buckingham Palace, not in anger, but in fascination. The palace gates had become a place where public feeling collected, and that mattered because monarchy lives partly in imagination. One woman held a sign that read, "Catherine carries the future," and those 4 words traveled faster than any official response. Catherine did not ask for the slogan, but the slogan chose her. Camilla did not answer it, but the silence answered for her. A veteran broadcaster gave the day its sharpest line during a live segment. He said, "This is not abdication, not scandal, but succession of influence." And the phrase landed because it explained what people could feel but not name. Abdication meant a monarch giving up the throne, but no throne had been surrendered here. Influence had moved instead, quieter than a crown, but almost as powerful. Charles heard the coverage with a still face. The king knew the public had chosen its emotional reading, and he knew that reading could not be reversed by palace language. Catherine had become hope, Camilla had become loss, William had become witness, and Charles had become the monarch who forced the change into daylight. Yet one final act remained inside the family. And when the king gathered them one last time, the speech that began as a shock became something heavier, a final verdict. The monarchy did not end that day. It changed shape. Charles had not destroyed Camilla, and he had not crowned Catherine in jewels or ceremony. He had done something more intimate and more devastating. He had named the person he believed could carry the emotional future of the crown, and in doing so, he forced everyone around him to accept the truth they had avoided. Charles gathered Catherine, William, and Camilla one final time, not to reverse the decision, but to define it. The family meeting mattered because it removed the shield of aides, statements, and palace wording, leaving only the people who had been wounded by the shift. A royal role, in plain terms, meant a duty carried within the family and before the public, shaping how the monarchy acted, appeared, and survived. Catherine's role now carried that kind of weight. Camilla understood it. William understood it. The king had made sure they all did. Charles spoke first, and his voice carried the exhaustion of a man who knew mercy and legacy could not always stand together. He told Camilla this was not punishment. He told Catherine this was not reward. The monarchy now needed trust, steadiness, and public emotional connection above private influence, because people could forgive old pain only if they believed the future was being protected. The king looked at the queen consort when he said it, and she did not look away. Catherine accepted the responsibility with quiet resolve. She told Charles she would lead only if the family understood that leadership must heal more than it commands. William watched her as she said it, and the prince finally seemed to breathe after days of silence. He knew Catherine was not stepping into victory. She was stepping into pressure, expectation, and the cruel test of becoming necessary. Camilla did not collapse in defeat. She did not offer a dramatic apology designed to rescue her image. The queen consort simply gave Catherine a restrained nod, and that small movement carried more truth than any speech could have. She had understood at last that the center had moved, and it would not move back. The pain remained, but resistance had lost its power. Charles then admitted what the household record later preserved in a private written account from the king's senior secretary. His explosive speech had not been spontaneous. It had been the hardest decision of his reign, because it placed the future above personal comfort. William finally spoke, saying the crown survives when the right person steps forward at the right moment. Everyone in the room knew he meant Catherine. This moment meant Catherine became the emotional anchor of the monarchy. Camilla learned that proximity to power is not the same as carrying its future. Charles proved that legacy sometimes demands a wound before it allows healing. The monarchy emerged bruised, exposed, and altered, but clearer than before. The future would not be led by resentment, it would be led by Catherine. In the silence after Charles's verdict, no one needed another speech, because the palace had already heard the truth. Catherine would lead now, and nothing inside the monarchy would ever feel the same again. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.